Continuing the conversation about renewable and green energy down here at WEFS. Tom Urquhart, who have you got?
Yeah, Didi, thank you very much indeed. We're talking to the team here from Strategy, and I've been joined this morning down here by James Thomas. James is one of the partners at Strategy and management consultant in the oil and gas industry sector. He's made his way down to WEFS, made his way down to ADNEC to speak to us live. Thanks so much indeed for joining us this morning.
Morning, Tom.
You've got a new report coming out at the end of the week. Timely, given the discussions that are going on, none more so than the big talker from yesterday, James. The UAE yesterday launching what it called the world's first facility to provide renewable energy at scale around the clock. You just heard more about that from Richard. It's one of our headlines here today. Massive project, and Mazda saying that it's, calling the initiative the company's most ambitious project to date. First and foremost, your reaction to that news yesterday?
It's exciting, isn't it? This whole issue of intermittency of renewables has been one of the big sticking points for, forever, really. And now to have it at utility scale, providing that green power to the grid 24 hours a day, it potentially can change the game for how we can ramp up renewables now and remove that need for that non-renewable backup in the system. So yeah, it's exciting. And I think to have it here in the UAE is also another marker. After COP with WEFS here, it's great that it's happening here and it sends a message.
Yeah, extraordinary initiative, and one that we've been reflecting on throughout the morning. Again, talking about this sort of moonshot challenge that was mentioned by His Excellency, but also, as you say, that intermittency, I can't even say it this morning, but you know exactly where I'm going with that, which has become an issue for the industry at the moment. Addressing that issue at the core is something that is going to benefit all.
Absolutely, absolutely. As I said, many systems around the world still rely on hydrocarbons as backup, or nuclear, still renewable. And this allows us now to break free of that and to say we can now go through the night. The sun doesn't shine all the day that we need the power, so this allows us to break that difference and finally have 24-hour green energy. And so we can start sunsetting some of the non-renewable energy in favour of it. And I think this is going to really catalyse investment in the sector.
Let's talk corporate decarbonisation if we can. That's the focus of your big report towards the end of the week as well. We know that policies are being tightened at the moment. Reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, obviously one of the key initiatives and goals as well. But again, from who you're talking to, the individuals, the organisations around the region at the moment, what are the big challenges that the energy companies are facing in light of these new challenges?
The direction of travel on policy is clear around the world. It started arguably with the carbon border adjustment mechanism in Europe. Others are starting to follow suit. And I think because that is a global policy, anything that comes into Europe in the next few years is going to have its carbon assessed, and if it's above a certain level, you'll be taxed on it. Energy is a global commodity, and so it will come in scope of that eventually. And so it's important that all the energy companies in the Middle East shift from just thinking about corporate targets and their contribution to national UN targets that they have to declare, to now thinking about the products and where they're going, what regulations they fall under, and how do they verify the carbon intensity of those products. And it's a big challenge because that's not how the world has been operating so far. It's just been operating at this blanket corporate level.
What is interesting as well is you mentioned that corporate level, you mentioned the goals that everyone's setting themselves as well. How's the transparency changing in terms of how transparent companies will need to be moving forward?
This concept of MRV, monitoring, reporting, verification, and standards are coming in behind these slowly and in a somewhat distributed fashion, but they are starting to converge, and ultimately it is driving more transparency, as you say. It's about really understanding the true emissions of carbon along the entire value chain that are baked into a product, and can you demonstrate that you've got the right methodologies in place to be able to prove that that's the case and verify that's the case. And that's definitely the way forward. And with that will come that transparency over time.
When it comes to emissions, I mean, obviously we are getting our head around, as is the corporate world, the emissions that they're responsible for. When it comes to the measuring of those emissions as well, is that something that needs to be addressed as things evolve, as our understanding of the situation evolves?
It will get better with time. Many companies have been monitoring their sort of macro level emissions for years, but it's been part of their HSE department reporting thing. We've got to get much better. We've got to get really more accurate about real-time measurement of emissions. A lot of people rely on analogues. How much fuel did you consume? Okay, let's convert that into an emission factor. We've got to get better at measuring the actual releases to the environment. And that will come, and it comes with better digital technology, better data. Eventually we get to a more verifiable set of data around emissions.
GCC, we're in the very heart of it. Almost a phrase that goes hand in hand with that is oil and gas. Look, this is a part of the world that is synonymous with oil and gas. And yet at the moment, you know, the challenges of decarbonisation very much to the fore when it comes to oil and gas. Again, in terms of that interpretation, the role that oil and gas will need to play moving forward, are they doing enough at the moment?
They're doing a lot. Now, is enough is always a question, right? I mean, from what we're trying to get to, now, like the announcements from Mazda, there's a tremendous amount of effort going into it. And yes, we have a hydrocarbon-driven economy historically, but the world needs that energy. If all of the national oil companies in the Middle East switched off their oil pumps tomorrow, the world would be crippled. There is a direct correlation between consumption of energy and global GDP. We need the energy. We're not ready for a full switch. We're in a transition, right? And we need hydrocarbons during that transition. Now, that's not to say we can't take the carbon intensity out of those hydrocarbons themselves. And in fact, that's where the Middle East should have an advantage over the global portfolio. They have some of the least energy intensive oil to produce here in the world compared to many others. And so if there's a barrel of oil that should be consumed or needs to be consumed anywhere in the world, it really should come from the Middle East. So this switch to product-based carbon accounting actually could be an advantage to the Middle East. It could enable them to prove that is the case and that the world should be taking their oil in favor of somebody else's.
Yeah, the voice of Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber is obviously so well respected, not just here in the region, but the world over, when it comes to energy. Comments that he's given, not just here at this event, but also previously as well. I mean, just how influential could regional GCC energy companies be moving forward, especially in what's going to be a very interesting year with new policies coming in over in the United States?
I think they're extremely important. They are sort of the main energy producer of the world, really. 30% of the energy comes from the Middle East. And so they have to have a say. They should have a say about how we transition. Now, there are some that will say they have vested interest in not transitioning. But I think when you look around you, Saudi is trying hard as well to remove hydrocarbons from its energy systems. The UAE is far advanced in terms of all the investments it's making in renewables and nuclear. And so you can't argue about the fact that the Middle East is moving as fast as they can, albeit while still maintaining or helping support the global demand for energy. And so that should continue.
The future is bright, as they say. James Thomas, thank you so much indeed for your time. James is partner at Strategy, and their report out a little later on this week on corporate decarbonisation. Keep an eye on that one. From James and I, back to you, Deanie.